In this video I will show you how to use your stamps in a creative way. You will see how to fill and use a very handy precision tip glue bottle from VaessenCreative. We will color the cutest cat designed by CarlaCreates and make a shaker tag that can also hold money. Are you ready to watch this shaker gift tag being made? Hello, it's Cisvolk. Time to enjoy card making with me. In front of me you see part of the new CarlaCreates by VaessenCreative collection. It is a party collection and so useful for any festive occasion. I will stamp and color the presents, the party hat and the kitten. I used the Dutch text stamp to go with my design, but if you prefer English, there are some great words and sentiments to combine. Today I will use the new large label die to make a fun shaker tag. Don't mind the die with the clip, it will look different in the original packaging. I received a sample die. Having dies like this makes it so easy to make labels or a shaker tag, you will see. To make the tag I will use paper from the Christmas cardstock paper collection. These are the three colors I will use and combine today: Craftlight, Blackberry and Poppy. To make a shaker tag you also need a plastic acetate sheet. I'm using this one. It is nice and sturdy. It is also perfect for making the wobblers. For coloring the stamps I use Florence watercolor paper, my go-to paper for card making. This is the A4 size, which is perfect for cutting out the large label. If you only want to stamp and color the cat or the dog, you can also use the A6 paper. Let's start by die cutting. The tag has 3 dies, one for the outline, one for the window or middle layer and one in between to create a nice frame. I cut the label once out of craft paper and once out of white paper, which will be the base. I also need a frame and I will cut it out of the red paper. For that I will cut the 2 dies together. Notice that these dies have one curved edge and one straight edge. See it? When I place it in the corner of the paper you can clearly see it. This side was straight and the other side is curved. It fits perfectly into the label shape. The same goes for the inner die. It also has a curved edge on one side. I place the 2 dies together and tape them in place before cutting. Then I also die cut just the straight center part from the craft label. I cut the large label again from a sheet of acetate plastic. Here I show you the product number. Some items can be hard to find on the website, but you can find all product links and information below the video description. I almost opened the packaging from the sticky side, but did you know that if you cut the top open instead, you keep a nice sleeve where you can easily take out one sheet from the top? The sticky strip stays closed, so it will not stick to your sheet when you take it out. I measure how much acetate I need before cutting. It is about 10.5 centimeters. This will be the shaker tag. On top comes the craft paper frame, so I will cut a window into that piece. Make sure the straight edge is at the bottom and the curved edge is at the top. I stamped the present with VersaFine black ink and sprinkled clear embossing powder on top. I am now heating it with my new heat tool from VaessenCreative. It works perfectly. It reaches temperature in just 5 seconds. You can see that I added some shading to the present and the bow. I did that using the Versa marker. In a moment I will make the party hats and then I will show you exactly how I did that. The lid of the gift box can be used in several ways and that makes it so much fun. The dog or the cat can peek out from under the lid, or you can place the lid underneath so it looks like it is peeking above the bow. I will leave the lid off, so I can slide in a banknote. I glue the cutout gift box behind a stencil. This is the random round stencil. By taping it down, I make sure it will not move. I pick up some distress ink in the color picket fence with my blending brush. With this white ink, I now add small dots to the box. The dots are not completely white. They stay a bit translucent. This way you can use the ink on any color of paper. It is a fun and quick way to add color and pattern, without having to color it all by hand. What is important though, is to add that shadow line first. I decided to give the bow and ribbon a different color. For that, I stamped the bow and part of the present one more time, and even the knot one extra time. The paper looks pink, because I treated it with an anti-static pouch. I use clear embossing powder from Ranger. I let the embossing powder fall off from different sides of the paper to get good coverage. You can see that in some areas where there is no powder from the embossing pouch, a bit of embossing powder still sticks to the paper. I wipe that away before heating it. Don't worry, the paper will not stay that strange pink color from the powder. I collected the embossing powder on a piece of vellum and now I use it as a funnel to pour the remaining powder back into the jar. I will show you how to remove that leftover powder. First, wave the paper a little to let the melted powder cool down. This takes maybe 1 or 2 minutes. Then, with a slightly damp microfiber cloth, I wipe the white embossing powder off the paper. If the cloth is not too wet, it wipes off very easily. Once the paper is dry again, it has its original color and the stamped and embossed part shines beautifully. I cut out only the bow, the knot and the ribbon. I stamp the knot of the bow one more time and also the ribbon that wraps around the box. To avoid wasting paper, I clean off the box edges on the stamp, so I only stamp the ribbon. I also heat embossed this part and cut out the knot and ribbon. Now we can layer the parts and add shading where needed. With the Versa marker, I draw a line along the side and bottom of the ribbon. That is the same as I did before on the ribbon decorated with the white dots, but that one will be covered later by the new ribbon. On the top knot, I draw a line on the left side, the same side as the ribbon. On the bow, I trace along the edges, where the stamped dots are, and also along the bottom edge. Where the bow naturally folds, I draw short lines pointing toward the center, to give it that pleated look. I do the same on the other side. Short strokes near the knot, a small fold line in the middle of the bow, and a bit of shading along the lower edge. Also a small shadow along the bottom of the knot and a little shading on top of the ribbon. Here you see the Versa marker again. Perfect for coloring on colored paper and also handy for touching up embossing. Now I glue the parts together using the new glue from VaessenCreative. My Dutch Doobadoo glue ran out and so far this one seems to work almost the same. It says suitable for paper, cardboard, wood, fabric, stone and more. Clear drying and water-based glue. So it is ideal for card making, as long as you do not apply it too thickly. And that is often the tricky part, because it is easy to use too much glue. That is why I use this handy little bottle. I have used it before with thinner glue, like decoupage glue or Mod Podge. And this new glue should work too. It should squeeze out easily, so let's try. I really like this bottle because it has a tiny hollow needle tip. And in the cap there is a small pin that fits into the needle to keep it from drying out. So that is very practical. If you turn the cap of the Glue Easy bottle, you open it. Squeezing some glue into the fine tip applicator bottle is easy and you can always refill when needed. I use it for all my precise glue work. At first I have to squeeze a bit firmly to get the glue into the needle, but once it is in, it flows easily. I also store my bottle upside down in a small basket, so the glue stays near the tip and I do not have to press hard each time. Look how tiny the dots of glue are that you can apply. Perfect! Now I do not need to squeeze hard at all. Now I glue the parts together. This creates a nice layered effect. You could also use foam blocks, but in this case I like it better when it stays flat. The shadow lines on the bow under the dotted stencil were not really necessary, but when I made them, I was not yet sure which parts I would re-stamp. If you look closely, you can still see the shading I made with the Versamarker on the lid and bottom of the box. And here we already gave a great base for a fun shaker tag. The gift box and the frame will go on top later. Now I'm going to stamp and color the kitten. Will you join me? To see where to stamp, I first position the stamps and the border on the paper. Van harte gefeliciteerd means happy birthday. Then I pick up the stamps using a clear block. I look at the lines on the clear block and make sure the distance is the same on both sides, so I will stamp in the same position later. When I look at the text on the clear block, I see it is not straight. I can still reposition it now. Using VaessenCreative ink, which is a clear and sticky ink, I now stamp the large words. The ink is the same as the one used in the Versa marker. I heat emboss the words with Super Sparkle Red Embossing Powder by Nellie's Choice. I place the label on the bottom of the jar. This is the perfect embossing powder for Christmas and party projects. When you apply the powder twice and let it fall off the paper from different sides, all ink will be covered nicely. I heat emboss from two sides of the paper, just to make sure no glitter is blown away. Maybe it wasn't even necessary. The powder stays in place and embosses beautifully. After heat setting, you will have a shiny, embossed and glittery text, just like it was cut out of glitter cardstock. Having placed the small text Gefeliciteerd in the center of the clear block, I now stamp it in black to create a nice contrast. I cover this text with clear embossing powder from Ranger and heat emboss it as well. I want to stamp an extra surprise text behind the banknote that I will add. Therefore, I place the gift box on the label temporarily and stamp just above it, again in black VersaFine ink and heat embossed with clear embossing powder. Now I'm not sure which colors I want to use for the white background. What I usually do is stamp and test it on a scrap piece of paper first. The background will be partially covered with red shaker bits, so adding red ink might make it too busy. I do not want it to be too dark, so I'm choosing between Tattered Rose and Garter Twigs ink. The colors I use for stamping are mostly the same ones I use for coloring. If the colors return in the project, everything matches nicely and looks like one complete design. The Tattered Rose ink looks calm, but a bit light. The Garter Twigs is quite dark and dominant. With the present and the kitten added, the darker background would make it too crowded. So I decide to go with the Tattered Rose ink. I place both the smallest and the medium-sized present stamps on a clear block. I stamp the presents randomly across the background. Not over the text, but slightly over the edges of the paper. To dress up the kitten and make it look even more festive, I stamp the party hats. I stamp both the large and the small one, so I can see later which one fits best. To assemble the shaker tag, you will need to attach the acetate plastic to the craft frame. I use double-sided tape for that, as it sticks best without leaving glue stains on the window. First I placed the tape on the craft frame and then I placed it onto the acetate. If I would do this another time, and I did, just watch until the end of the video for the label where I used the dog, but another time I would stick the double-sided tape on the edges of the acetate and then place the thinner paper frame on top. This gives you more wiggle room to position it correctly. Now I had to twist and trim a little to make a nice clean edge. Using the fine tip glue bottle, I glue the red border on top of the frame. Do not mind the small mistake I made while die cutting. I will cover it up and no one will notice. Remember to store the glue bottle upside down. On the back of the acetate, which will be the inside of the shaker, we need to stick a border of foam tape that is thick enough to hold the shaker elements you want to use. First I wipe the edges clean, so the tape will stick well. I stick the tape exactly on the edge, so when you look at the side of the shaker later, you will only see a white border. Make sure there are no gaps where shaker material could leak through. For sturdiness, I also add tape at the top. Sometimes the glue on the tape is so sticky that shaker material gets stuck to the edge, preventing it from moving. Or the acetate can be so static that the sequins or glitter cling to the plastic instead of shaking. To prevent that, I add a bit of powder from the embossing pouch to the edges of the foam tape and the acetate. It is a bit too much this time, but after shaking it well, it will disappear. The shaker material I use is my favorite. I've used it many times in my videos. It is Nellie's Choice Confetti. This time I use the color red, but there are also white, green, purple, blue, pink and yellow versions. The shape is ideal for applying it easily. And the content is perfect mix of light and heavy, large and small, and the colors and glittery effect match beautifully. Place the shaker material in the center of the paper, so you can clearly see how it will look in the end. If the shaker material lies on the acetate, while removing the protective backings of the foam strips, it might all stick to the tape. I add a generous amount because I will place the present and the cat at the bottom later. The shaker is quite large, so with too little material it would not be visible enough. Press the edges down firmly before you start shaking. While assembling the card, I forgot to add foam blocks only to the edges of the present. You need to leave space in the middle of the present box to slide in the banknote. Some layers I attach raised and some flat, to create a dimensional effect. Make sure you watch until the end, to see how the shaker looks when using the dark Odey. And a number stamp instead of text. That shaker tag was made in the same way as this one. Some layers I attach raised using foam tape. As I mentioned before, I added too many foam blocks on the present, so I tore it off and stuck it back with foam only on the edges. I chose the large head for the sweet cat. To add a ribbon to the tag, I used this satin ribbon. What is handy about it is that there is a plastic rim around the roll, which makes it easy to pull off a piece of ribbon without unrolling the entire roll. In the Odey's birthday party die set, there's also a beautiful bow die. I cut it once out of white paper and once out of red paper. When I stick them together slightly offset, I can place the bow on top of the uneven border in the top left corner, where my die shifted in the machine while cutting the red border. I'm quite happy with how this shaker label turned out. It is a fun birthday gift and something the receiver will keep for quite a while. Are you inspired and would like to make this as well? Let me know in the comments. If you share your handmade cards and use CarlaCreates designs, please tag us. We love to see your creations. For more card making inspiration, you can check my Facebook, Pinterest and Instagram accounts Cisvolk, or the CarlaCreates accounts of course. Product information and links can be found in the description below this video. Check them out and keep the cookie settings turned on, as it helps me receive affiliate income. I hope you enjoyed this video and will show your appreciation in a message below this video. And remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel Cisvolk, so you will not miss any new videos. Have a nice day and I will see you next time. Bye bye!